Salute to the court jesters when they're the only ones that speak the damn truth. Hope all of y'all are well. Welcome back to the Onyx Report, Black Masculinist news for the day. Man, a lot going on. So much to get going on that it's hard to keep up with it all, particularly in the midst of all the other work we all got to do. But it is what it is, and we got to get to this work because for too long, men, most particularly black men, have not been able to say what they need to say. And it has been a long-standing legacy, I would argue, in regard to what I consider black masculinism to be. The case that it's been the entertainers, most particularly the comedians, that have been able to speak the truth. Sometimes the rappers, but comedians, I've noticed it for much longer. I mean, going back to the Richard Pryors, the Red Foxes, coming all the way up through the Eddie Murphys, the Chris Rocks, and the Dave Chappelles, we've seen comedians speak truth about what's going on in Black America, right? Most particularly in regard to gender. But before we get to that, real quick, let me also suggest you check out the new line of shirts. Just came out the other day on the Institute for Black Male Studies website. I will put the link in the description if you're interested. But these are our Black Men Matter shirts. They come in white and black and a number of other colors for that matter. So if you want to support, you can support by purchasing an item from the Institute for Black Male Studies merchandise store, or you can, as usual, make a donation through Super Chat here on YouTube, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. Y'all know the deal. Support the channel. Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate so we can keep this pushing. But let's continue. So one of the things we've seen very recently, and this is a well put together clip that I was sent on Twitter, kind of framed an interesting response to two types of feminism in essence. And both of those feminisms have been instrumental in undermining black men, most particularly. Let's check it out. So we got comedian Bill Burr and, of course, comedian actor Jason Whitlock. Now, I can tell you I've never necessarily been a fan of Whitlock, but I haven't, really engaged much of his work. So I'm not in a position to critique him per se. Bill Burr, I've been a fan of for years, most particularly in relation to Patrice O'Neal. But that said, here's my thing. Sometimes people will come to me and say, well, you quoted this person, I don't like them. You quoted this person, and they, on another occasion, they said this, and I didn't like it. Look, my thing is I use it. I cite people on a case-by-case basis. If what they said was true, I'll use it. I'll reflect it. I'll post it up and make my points in regard to it. I'm not advocating for any and everything that anybody's ever said just because I cite them. I'm talking specifically about what I'm citing them about. So if you have a problem with somebody that I've cited and you don't like them, hey, feel free not to like them. But the question is what I cited true? Or is it useful for us to get our point across? And that's really why I engage it. But anyway, let's check them out. Let's see what they had to say on this matter and where they went with it.
The woke movement was supposed to be about people of color, not getting opportunities, the at-bats that they deserved, finally making that happen. And it was about that for about 8 seconds. And then somehow, white women swung their Gucci-booted feet over the fence of oppression and stuck themselves at the front of the line. I don't know how they did it.
The spoils of the civil rights movement went to women. The feminist movement overtook the civil rights movement. The black woman licked her finger, stuck it in the air, figured out which direction the winds were blowing, and it wasn't blowing the black man's direction, and the black woman switched teams. She became a feminist. You may not like what I'm saying, but that's exactly what the hell happened.
I've never heard so much complaining in my life from white women. My life is so hard with my SUV and my heated seats. You have no idea what it's like to be me. Trash and white guys. The nerve. Where's the camera? The nerve of you white women. Listen, I don't want to speak ill of my bitches here, okay? I don't. But let's go back in history here, okay? You guys stood by us toxic white males through centuries of our crimes against humanity. You rolled around in the blood money. And occasionally, when you wanted to sneak off and hook up with a black dude, if you got caught, you said it wasn't consensual. Yeah. That's what you did. That's what you did.
Wow. Patrick Moynihan diagnosed a cancer destroying Black America, the emasculation and the marginalization of the Black man. The left rejected his diagnosis. They didn't trust the science, so they framed it as racist, offered the Black woman 20 pieces of silver, offered the Black woman 20 pieces of silver.
Come on, man.
And the cancer metastasized all over, and then they doubled down on the Black matriarchy. That's what happened.
The woke movement was...
Yep. That's what we're looking at. Now, obviously, it's much better if you can see the video, especially when it comes to Bill Burr, because some of his facial expressions just killed me in that bit. But it was fire. And I remember when he did it on Saturday Night Live, and I dropped him. My jaw dropped. Similarly with Whitlock. Because at the end of the day, whether you like what they said or not, there's more honesty coming out of these two comedians that I've seen coming out of scholars, public intellectuals, and activists in years. More in years, especially as it relates to Black men. Because here's the thing, both men are really talking about feminism as a political tool, that's been used as a weapon, not only against men in the so-called patriarchy, but actually more particularly used against Black men. White feminism in particular, if you go back to Dr. Tommy Curry's work, where he talks about not only the origins of subcultural violence theory, but also the early work going back to the 19th century, where white feminists began to really frame the direction of Western patriarchy. And Dr. Curry argues in a much more eloquent manner than I'm giving him credit for in this moment, and researched, of course, because I'm just kind of casually mentioning it, so you'll go check it out for yourself, that really the feminism that we see coming out of the first wave amongst white women is actually late stage patriarchy, right? Now, those are my words. You need to check out Dr. Curry yourself to understand the argument that he's putting forth. But really, what he's talking about are the ways that white women organized in the face of Black men getting access to the right to vote, right? And they organized in such fashion that they demanded, most particularly from other white men, that they be the ones to get the right to vote first, because Black men were no less than animals, right? So white feminism finds its grounding not just in this abstract, desire to vote the way we're taught about it in school. It's actually more so targeted at making sure that they had power over Black men in particular, and of course the Black community by extension, right? In other words, they advanced themselves at our expense. Much the same happened by the time you got to the mid 20th century, and they started to frame themselves as a minority, getting policy from the executive branch of government to actually target white women and advance them, right? But again, this was policy that was at one point in time targeted at Black men, at being considered in regard to a certain level of support. White women stepped up and absorbed that. But Whitlock isn't wrong either. And he actually starts to target Black feminism. And one of the things he argues is that they were seduced by white feminism. White feminism offered them resources, offered them tangible benefits if they were able to jump on board with the white feminist agenda. And all they had to do was the same that white women were doing with white men. Target Black men as the enemy, and then you got a case, right? Because we were coming up on a time period where white society targeting Black men was seen as racist, and it was. So to get Black women to do it, right, how could they be wrong? They're Black too. They're authentic in their case. But we're not going to talk about the ways they were seduced with resources, to the point where, again, poor Black women had access to welfare resources, mostly that men didn't get. Middle-class Black women had access to education and white-collar jobs. Again, most men didn't get. I produced the data on this for years. I made chart after chart. From 1976 to at least 2018, Black men have half the degrees Black women do. And those degrees often translate to white-collar employment. So even though Black men can earn fairly well in blue-collar labor, at the end of the day, we don't tend to have the same job security. We don't tend to have the same access to ready employment. And we don't tend to have the same access to resources if that employment goes under. Which is why the rates of homelessness for Black men are hard to find in some instances, because they categorize it by race, but they don't want to, they really don't want to disaggregate the data by race and gender, because it would show a highly disproportionate relationship between even Black men and women in regard to, again, homelessness, incarceration, so on and so forth. I can go down the list. See, the reality is both of these comedians are calling out something that most have been afraid to say in a public arena. And that is precisely that both groups, white and black women, who embraced a very particular type of feminism that was used as a political wedge, targeted black men as the primary point of exploitation to benefit themselves and advance their agenda. And when black men finally start to speak on it, the first response we get is to be ignored. The second response we get is that we're nothing but misogynists and racists and sexist. But the last response is when other people start to listen. And this is something we're starting to notice. People who would normally not listen are listening, whether it has to do with Bill Burr, Jason Whitlock, or Kevin Samuels. The more you try and denounce what black men are saying, the more people are getting to hear it. And I'm going to tell you personally, black men have been reaching out to me from Australia to South Africa to North Africa to Europe to Asia to the Middle East, all the way to every part of the United States and South America. I'm having black men reach out to me from all over the world. Even what Dr. Curry calls racialized men reaching out to me to say, hey, the same thing is happening here. The feminism that you guys are talking about has not only made its way to our shores, but the mistreatment and the underdevelopment of black men in particular is happening where we are. So people are listening, whether they like it or not. And the more it spreads, the more black men are starting to lift their head up and realize that we're going through the same thing. That said, stay on point, challenge this shit wherever it raises its ugly head, and communicate with other brothers so that we can get on the same platform when it comes to actually pointing out what needs to happen to improve our situation. Peace.